Okay, class, welcome back to English 23. Let's look and see where we are in regards to the class and the course policies and syllabus. So, as I talked about last time, we're in the Romantic period. I'm going to lecture on that a little bit today. I'll lecture on some aspects of it from where we are in the syllabus. Once again, we were reading and looking into the Romantic period. I started lecturing on that last time. We're going to talk today about the Songs of Innocence and Songs of Experience from William Blake, because this will be important for our midterm when it comes around. Also, class, we were moving into Robert Burns, we had alluded to last time, the great Scottish poet. And then this week, Mary Wollstonecraft, a vindication for the rights of women that we talked about. And then William Wordsworth. Once again, class, your job as a student is to stay up with the readings that we have, and I'll illuminate them. I'm also going to post to some documentaries that will help us this semester as they come up. I think I'm going to do one on Mary Wollstonecraft. So what I'd like to do today is I want to talk a bit about William Blake and lecture on him, because he's going to be important for us, and he is important for us, class. And then also at the end today, I want you to note that for Friday, it says here on the 9th, start researching possible topics for your oral presentation. And it says epistolary paper there. This semester, we're not going to have an epistolary paper, but once again, you will have this oral presentation. So I'm going to at the end of the day talk about that and show you some aspects of what you need to be doing in regards to that to help you once again come up with a good oral presentation that you will make this semester for 15 to 20 minutes, and that you're going to once again tape and you will post, send it to me, and then once again that oral presentation I will disseminate throughout the class. So class, let's talk a little bit about William Blake. It says once again in our textbook, starting on once again page 122, which I'm going to lecture from right now, my annotated textbook, that William Blake, what he called his spiritual life. So we're dealing with aspects of once again spirituality here with Blake. From 1757 to 1827 was a varied, free, and dramatic, as his corporal life was simple, limited, and unadventurous. His father, we learn, was a London tradesman. His only formal education was in art. At the age of 10, he entered a drawing school, and later he studied for a time at the school of the Royal Academy for Art. So we see that once again within his work that we're going to discuss today. Many of his poems are like pictures or paintings, and then of course he painted right alongside it these almost spiritualism paintings that dealt with ecstasies, in a way, of spiritual ecstasies, class. At 14, he entered an apprenticeship for 7 years to a well-known engraver and began reading widely in his free time and trying his hand at poetry. At 24, he married Catherine Boucher, the daughter of a market gardener. She was then illiterate, but Blake taught her to read and to help him in his engraving and printing. So once again, the engraving of plates, a certain type of artwork, and the engraving to class of poems. Now, To read a Blake poem. To read a Blake poem, this is on page 123 in our book, without the pictures is to miss something important. Blake places words and images in a relationship that is sometimes mutually enlightening and sometimes turbulent. And that relationship is an aspect of the poem's argument. So we can see, class, once again, there's turbulence in the work. There's a lot of friction of images and meanings, class. In this mode of relief etching, he published Songs of Innocence, once again, which is on our course policies and calendar we're talking about today, and then added supplementary poems and printed the Songs of Innocence and then the Songs of Experience, which were published in 1794. The two groups of poems represent the world as it is envisioned by what he calls two contradictory states of the human soul. So once again, much as that was before his time and then after his time, and even maybe today, certainly today, people can view the world that way. The contradictory states of both, once again, the secular and the non-secular world. Okay, sometimes doing war within themselves, sometimes integrating themselves. Gradually, Blake's thinking about human history and his experience of life and suffering articulated themselves in giant forms, and their actions, which came to constitute a complete mythology. So once again, as it continues, even today, we can look at it in modern times. Why is man once again put here? Why is woman put on this earth? The big questions. What's the mystery of life? Can life be free of suffering? Most probably not. Can life be only joy? Most probably not. But hopefully, this life contains both. Okay, contains both. And giant forms and their actions, which came to constitute, once again, a complete mythology. As Blake's mythical character Lowe said, speaking for all imaginative artists, I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's system. Fascinating. So he had to come up with this system for his own life rather to be enslaved by someone else's dictates. And so, once again, that journey to becoming an individual, right? Very exciting for us right now, just even think of it. Rather than to be enslaved by someone else's world that tells the artist or the poet or even the student what they should do, that journey in life of becoming completely one's own and eventually creating one's own mythology. And that's certainly what Blake did. I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. So he had to create his own rather than someone else telling him once again how he should work, how he should be a poet, how he should be an artist, how he should be a man. Class, I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. This coherent but constantly altering and enlarging system composed by the subject matter first of Blake's minor prophecies, completed by 1795, and then on to the major prophetic books on which he continued working until about 1820. Okay. In his 60s, Blake gave up poetry to devote himself to pictorial art. In the course of his life, he produced hundreds of paintings and engravings, many of them illustrations for the work of other poets, including representation of Chaucer's Canterbury Pilgrims, a superb set of designs for the book of Job, right? And so we can see even in Blake's work aspects of biblical texts, right? And the mystery of, say, of the book of Job in the Bible class, and the suffering of in Job, and maybe the transcendence of that. And a series of illustrations for Dante, in which he was still hard at work when he died. At the time of his death, Blake was little known as an artist and almost entirely unknown as a poet. Okay, and then that, of course, would change. That, of course, would change big time. On 125, once again, in the section talking about Blake, a very interesting, all religions are one. All religions are one. Blake's mythical premise or starting point is not transcendent God, but the universal man who is God and who incorporates the cosmos as well. So fascinating. Now, sometimes it's fascinating to always look to aspects of the Bible too, where in the New Testament, sometimes it's forgotten. They'll ask, or Jesus, where is God to be found? Inside each and every man and woman. Inside each and every man and woman is the mythical place of God. Fascinating. So he's tapping that into here in a very broad sense of the cosmos. And once again, of the human form being divine. Okay. The human form being of spirit, possibly. Once again, this is his philosophy. The human form of incorporating being of God. Okay. And then once again, describes a man who is God and who incorporates the cosmos as well. So the cosmos, the cosmological entity, and the whole cosmos of the world and of space and of the stars and of the moon and of the Milky Way. That aspect being inside men and women too. Fascinating. That's once again when I talk to my students about the mystery. How much do we know? Very little. Why do we go to literature? To learn more, once again, and to ask more questions, and to learn about possibly who and where we are. The human form divine, and names him Albion. The fall in this myth is not the fall of humanity away from God, but a falling apart of primal people, a fall into division. Lisa! I'm sorry. Hold on one second. I gotta let this cat out. I just called my wife, but she's not here. All right, kitty. Let's go. All right, sorry about that. I just had to let Marlo, the cat, out. Now, the fall of man in this myth is not the fall of humanity away from God, but a falling apart of primal people, a fall into division. In this event, the original sin is what Blake calls selfhood. Okay, so the fall away from the whole. The attempts of an isolated part to be self-sufficient, the breakup of the all-inclusive universal man. So the fall of the universal man to the selfhood of man. In Eden, into exile parts, it is evident, serves to identify the fall with the creation not only of man and of nature as we identify, know them, but also in a separate sky God who is alien from humanity. Universal man divides first into the four mighty ones who are the Zeus or chief powers, and component aspects of humanity, and these in turn divide into male specters and female imagination. In addition to Eden, there are three successively lower states of being in the fallen world, which Blake's called Beulah, a pastoral condition of easy and relaxed innocence without clash or contraries. Okay, so once again, the different states of belonging, human experience, suffering, conflicting contraries, and Blake's hell, the lowest state or limit of bleak rationality, tyranny, static negation, and isolated selfhood. So we see that, we could look at that today in a contemporary context. A lot of what he is talking about is still going on today. Class. It will culminate in an apocalypse in terms of his controlling image of the universal man. Blake describes what will eventually happen in an apocalypse as a return to the original undivided condition, his resurrection to unity. So, once again, the universal man, a woman, the fall into chaos, the resolution of chaos, and once again, coming back to a resurrection of unity. Fascinating, William Blake. What is confusing to many readers is that Blake alternates this representation of the fall as a fragmentation of the one primal man into separate parts with a different kind of representation in terms of two sharply opposed ways of seeing the universe. In this latter mode, the fall is a catastrophic change from imaginative insight, which sees the cosmos as unified and humanized, to sight by the physical eye, which sees the terms of the distinction. The apocalypse towards which Blake, as imaginative artist, strives unceasingly will enable men and women once again to envision all beings as participant in the individual life that he calls the universal brotherhood, and I would put into sisterhood of Eden. That is a humanized world in which all individuals can feel at home, right? So almost sort of like a utopian perspective. So how exactly, once again, this one of the reasons we're studying it, it's illumination of today, of what we're going once again in the world, the fall into chaos, and the hope for universal brotherhood and sisterhood, where we all come together in this organic whole. It's fascinating, class, once again. All religions are one, right? Blake talks about everything once again being together. So, class, so we have these poems of in specific poems in our text here of Blake. And once again, I'll read a couple of these to you from songs, say, for example, of experience on 134 that I want to concentrate on, that I'd like to concentrate on in. It talks about, from Songs of Experience, the introduction, hear the voice of the bard. So hear the voice of the poet, who present, past, and future sees, whose ears have heard the holy word that walked among the ancient trees. So fascinating, once again, the whole of the cosmos of nature and God. Nature and God. The ancient trees, calling the lapsed soul and weeping in the evening dew, that might control the starry pole, and fallen light renews. So once again, the falling of the sunset, the darkness, and then the light coming back, class. O earth, return. Arise from the dewy grass. On page 135, night is worn, and the morn rises from the slumberous mass. So the sleeping, coming back, coming back. Turn away no more. Why wilt thou turn away? The starry floor, the watery shore is given thee till the break of day. Okay, fascinating, simple poem. Day and night, death and destruction, death. Why turn away? Why turn away? Is given thee till the break of day. Fascinating. The coming back again and the losing and the maybe perhaps the winning and the coming together of man and spirit, women and spirit of the cosmos in that search for the universality and the wholeness. So, interesting class. And then class is going to be important for us. The poem, we might as well look at it now for us. Is in that Songs of Experience, he talks about London. He talks about London, class, which is real important, on page 141. So here we're dealing with London at the time in a historical context, in a cultural context. London, class, where he mentions in Songs of Experience the very, very challenging times that a city like that was going through in, once again, 1794. Before the child labor laws, before things like social security help that could help people. The big division back then between the rich and the poor, even more so than now. London, William Blake, 1794, page 141. I wandered though each chartered street, near where the chartered Thames does flow, and mark in every face I meet marks of weakness and marks of woe, in every cry of every man, in every infant's cry of fear, in every voice, in every band, the mind-forged manacles. The mind-forged manacles are chains, I hear. How the chimney sweepers cry, every blackening church appalls, and the hapless soldier's sigh runs in blood down Paris walls. But most, though midnight streets I hear, how the youthful harlot's curse blasts the newborn infant's tear, and blights with plagues the marriage hearse. Okay. So we're seeing there, class, once again, a lot of bleakness based in the city of London. It's interesting to think of 1794, almost the end of what was going on too in France, of the French Revolution, right? Of the masses rising up once again against the kings and the queens to try and get something, what? To try and get a help from the life of misery. And we see is the songs of experience rather than the songs of innocence, class. This fantastic portrait of a city in verse. And once again, the terror and the sadness and the plagues, the marriage hearse. almost everyone is in this is kind of condemned to this life of almost, it seems like you're without spirit in the city. And then, of course, Blake's call for overall in the redemption of what? The universal man someday. The man and woman of the cosmos. The man and woman of nature. The man and woman of an aspect of God or the Redeemer. Man and woman of the stars and the cosmos. Fascinating. William Blake, class. So that gives us an insight into him. And then it talks about in London and in Blake, one of the main themes of London that we could see in analysis class is alienation. It is both Blake's own personal expression we see and his observation that people in the world at large are feeling similarly estranged from the city and world in which they live. And we think of that now almost today in a universal context of aspects of what's happening around the world too, now, to this day. As a liberal of his time, like Thomas Paine, William Godwin, and Mary Wollstonecraft, Blake was against the established order of Britain in the old European monarchical system. He describes the depressed ermine population in London with their marks of weakness and marks of woe. Blake views these people as imprisoned not only by poverty, but by thought and what he called, we read about the mind-formed manacles or chains, once again. The imprisonment of one's own mind in chains. And then, of course, we can see that today, too. For any of us, you know, how do we throw those off and get to that purity of hope and that purity of belief and that place of possibilities and hope, certainly, that we find in college or can class. Blake's views of these manacles, these chains, implicate three establishment elements: the military, organized religion, and marriage, which itself is a corollary of organized religion. The poem's last stanza implies that the institution of marriage, particularly in its relation to the church, is akin to death. Blake's relates all three of these systems to the pervasive isolation and alienation of a city in which people see themselves as strangers in their own world. They've been alienated, class. They've been alienated. The backdrop of London is the early phase, class. Once again, we see this poem of the Industrial Revolution. The rural laboring class was increasingly moving or being too moved by the owner's exploitation of land to the cities to work in new factories. Blake's focus on these urban issues is unusual in comparison with the poets of his time, such as Wordsworth, who will even, as we see in our reading, have an idealized view of the contemporary city. Okay. London is a 16-line poem composed of 4 stanzas of alternately rhyming short lines from the Songs of Experience. And it contributes to Blake's portrait of the fallen human nature, okay, of man's and woman's fallen human nature. Blake focuses attention on the condition of London, England, the capital not only of the country but also of culture, Yet as the four stanzas make abundantly clear, Blake does not share the opinion that the city sets a positive example. Excuse me. Each stanza of London points out ways in which the British monarchy and English law causes human suffering. The narrator comments that everywhere he looks, he sees unhappiness and people are suffering. Okay. And then once again, Blake will talk about, or does talk about, the possibility, not in this poem, of redemption. Trying to somehow get back to that place of universalness, of oneness. Someday, the ideal that maybe a person can find in themselves, or has to find God within themselves. Hope, belief, purity, nature, the trees, the cosmos, the stars, the moon. Once again, the redemption of life. Class, very, very good. Okay, so be thinking of that in regards to your midterm. I'll be helping you with that as we continue to dive into this material, into this literature in regard to Blake and these other readers that we have on there that you're being exposed to. Certainly Robert Burns, Tam O'Shanter, his great poem, Mary Wollstonecraft, and Vindication of the Rights of the Women, where we are right now. And then once again into William Wordsworth, the great English poet, for this week too, pages 280 to once again 282, and then the preface to the lyrical ballads of Wordsworth. Okay, so class, that's where we are there. I hope that helps, and it certainly will as you continue your reading. Now, so for next week, please, once again, some short readings. We're dealing with Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud and my heart leaps up. 345, short poem. Composed upon Westminster Bridge, and it's Boethius Evening, page 355, Wordsworth. Dorothy Wordsworth, 407 to 408, from the Alfoxden Journal and the Grassmere Journals, 410 to 423. So if you do that, that will take care of next week. Excuse me. And if you're in those readings, once again, within the book, annotating the book, and then you can move on for the 19th into Coleridge. Okay. The great English poet Coleridge. But let me stop now and start talking about what you should be doing by Friday. Start researching possible topics for the oral presentation. And this says for the 9th. So that's one of the things you'll be doing this weekend, is you're going to, once again, start researching possible topics for that oral presentation. And once again, as we talked about last time, look up here on page 2. You're going to make an oral presentation to the class that you'll record this semester. All the directions during the semester. Each student will make a 15-minute, 20-minute oral presentation to the class on a writer that we will discuss during that period. And I alluded to that last time, and I talked about this. And I talked about the different things that a student could do in that 15 to 20-minute presentation. And then there's some things a student must do. Okay? But Friday, this week, start researching possible topics, excuse me, for that oral presentation, and we will not be having an epistolary paper. So, let's look at this. Let me help you out. one of the things, class, that's going on here, it says that starting on the 23rd, we will have conferences for the epistolary paper. Conferences, and once again, we're not going to have an epistolary paper for the oral presentations are due. So what you're going to do for me, and we're not there yet, but we will be on once again around the time of the 23rd. I'll go back and look at this date, around there. All you're going to do is turn in a one-page rough draft summary for your oral presentation topic. And then all topics must be approved by the instructor. So you'll send those to me, and then I'll take some time looking over them and then get back to you individually through Blackboard messages during these dates, that says for conferences. And so we'll write back and forth, class. You'll send me the pitch, and I'll move to approve it. Now, so when are we going to start these conferences? We're going to have a midterm that I'll prepare you for. I did a good bit of that today where, I'll give you a study guide ahead of time. And we'll talk about Blake and these other writers. And then I'll give you a midterm that you're going to do for me. You'll do it at home. It'll be an essay written in class. And then you'll turn it in before spring break. And then we're going to start these oral presentations. Okay? After spring break, and we read Lord Byron, and we read Don Juan, and we read Shelley. Once again, we're dealing with a lot of important poets here at this stage of the game. Then, class, it'll be time for oral presentations. So your job is to decide or start thinking about on Friday what you're going to do for an oral presentation. If we look at the calendar, we see that there can be an oral presentation made simply called Thomas de Quincey. So you might be right now, you do a little research ahead of time and think about, once again, for your conference, when you turn in this one-page rough draft summary, you may decide, that's the oral presentation. So you can start researching that now. You don't want to do too much. That's why it's only a one-page, double-spaced summary of what your presentation is going to be on. Or you may want to do a presentation on George Gordon. Or another possibility this semester, there'll be oral presentations that a student can do on Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, the great poets. Okay? The great poets. Then, coming down this semester, there'll be the opportunity for an oral presentation on John Keats, the great poet, the Victorian Age, and Thomas Carlyle. Oral presentations. And then a student could also do an oral presentation on, it says down here on the 12th, John Stuart Mill, Alfred Lord Tennyson, or Robert Browning. So these are the wide, once again, open categories. And then as we move along, oral presentations on the 15th, Elizabeth Barrett Browning, Christina Rossetti, William Morris, Gerard Manley Hopkins, and The Woman Question. So those are all possibilities for oral presentations this semester. Then on the 22nd of April, Oscar Wilde, possibility a student could do. social influence of Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde, literary influence, possibility for an oral presentation. Right? Very good. And then on the 24th, oral presentation, a student could do William Butler Yeats and Irish Nationalism, or William Butler Yeats, the writer, Virginia Woolf, writing stylist. Once again, James Joyce, the writer, is Outlaw, or Joyce is Dublin. So far, we've got about 20 students in the class. These are all possibilities for you to start thinking about. And then class, once again, oral presentations, Dylan Thomas, Seamus Heaney. All possibilities. So look over those. Your job as a student is to start looking over these and ask, once again, be thinking, what do I want to do? Dive into this. And then class will have that deadline. We still got plenty of time, where you will send me just a one-page summary of a possibility of what you want to do. But they have to be in those dates and the time that's already laid out for you for the oral presentation. And then once I approve it, class, you will go ahead and make it. You'll make that oral presentation. You'll film it. You'll send it to me. I'll post it to the class so we can all watch it. And then class, once again, very carefully look over. And then it's once I sign off on it and we come to a meeting and I let you know, once again, with our conversation and Blackboard messages, that I approve it, you'll be able to go and start researching that. And then, what are the directions? Right here, page 2. All the specific directions are right in there. And then class, if you have questions, I'm here to help. I am here to help. So, excellent. So there we are, class. That helps us going into the end of next week, where we need to be, what you need to be thinking about. Make sure that, class, you're reading for next week, and that you are nailing, once again, Mary Wollstonecraft this week, A Vindication of the Rights of Women, and then William Wordsworth, and those seminal short poems, and then into Dorothy Wordsworth, and then on the 19th, going ahead of ourselves, Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Okay. All fantastic, once again, pieces of literature that we're dealing with. So I think that pretty much takes us where we need to be. The songs of innocence, the songs of experience, William Blake, and how wonderful, too, it illuminates where we still are today in society, and of men and women of the world, and the possibility for, once again, always, I believe in hope. The possibility of, once again, this integration of oneself with nature and love and the cosmos, and man and women, and once again living in a divine way, in addition to the way of the, when we deal with the secular and the non-secular worlds. Very good. So I'm glad we could do this once again. The Norton Anthology of English Literature. Just fantastic what we're getting to dive into deeply into my annotated text. And I think that will do it about for now. Class, here's wishing you well for the rest of the week. Here's wishing you well as you start considering what you're going to work on. I'll leave you as the Irish always say, good luck, good luck, good luck. And then, class, if you ever any questions, I've been very diligent, always within 2 days. I get back to students. Any questions that you have whatsoever. I've already had quite a few from this class that I've answered. Okay, class, very good. Good luck, good luck, good luck. And I hope you stay safe and well. Till the next time.